She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand. Hold up on she frock, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For cockcrow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Cockcrow, dagaba, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Cockcrow, dagaba, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Come and hear this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. All day a back down, me now a come home. The naga jackass yard for fetchy load. Cockle shy hand, bag over shoulder, running by his side, a Rexy and Rover. From the farm, them a come. Sun a go down but up the river. Some washing clothes, some folks are bathing at the water. Fisherman, they catch them a bring. From a canoe boat, man, them start offloading. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Lokonani. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Bangameri. Listen to this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. Them children glad when the weekend come. Out in the yard, them all gather round. Some a play catcher, some making house from straw. Two who come later, a grandma or grandpa. All a sit down just a wait. Moonlight so bright, it's just the right time to listen story or to say a little nursery rhyme. Grandpa voice a echo in the night as he tell some picnic are there with fright. Oh, Ligan, Mungeza, Massa Kurma Nancy, even Watamuma. Oh, Ligan, Moongazer, Massa Kurma Nancy, even Watamuma. Yeah, man, that's the true story that tell the people about life in the country, life in the country.
If you are looking to have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Alistair Collins firm, located at the Kellyan Mall, 162 Lamaha Street in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Alistair Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-1451. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Alistair Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Alistair Collins Firm. Contact them at Alistair Collins Firm.
That little ditty we used to torment our teachers with when we were kids goes something like this. Onward, upward, Mary had a go. Day by day she tied it to a rope, till at length they got past the rope, and Miss Mary had to run behind it. We had a lot of fun with that, but do you actually know how beautiful these words are? Here's the Song of Guyana's Children by W. Hawley Bryant. Born in the land of the mighty Roraima, land of great rivers and far-stretching sea. So like the mountains, the sea, and the river, great, wide, and deep in our lives would we be. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana sons and daughters can be.
All right. Hey, guess what? Good evening to all of you. It is 4.5 minutes after 9 o'clock. We'll give you a chance to share the link and share it to your relatives, your friends, and everybody that you have to share it to. We have some very important issues to discuss with you here tonight. We have, in fact, we have four distinguished gentlemen who are with us. We have former Deputy Commissioner of Police, I can be corrected, but Mr. Paul Slow. You all know Mr. Paul Slow. You can't run away. You know his name. You know him. You know what he's about. He's the chairman of the Police Service Commission, something that the PPP doesn't like. That agency, they do not like the agency now because they cannot control the members of that agency. And the chairman of that Police Service Commission is still Paul Slow. He is with us this evening, along with Dr. Van West Charles, Dr. Richard Van West Charles. He's the former Minister of Health many moons ago, and he's the former head CEO of GWI. Dr. Van West Charles has spent years upon years at PAHO. So when he speaks of health matters, he's not speaking off the top of his head or for some kind of political expediency or whatever. He speaks because he knows what he's talking about. Simple as that. He knows what he's talking about. And, it pains me that when the coalition, when the APNUFC or the PNC or whatever, when they're having press conferences and they're talking about coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, I don't know why they don't have this man next to them. I just don't know. But then again, maybe I do know. It's okay. Look, before we get to our guest, electoral democracy. People often write about, and we have that columnist who loved to write about it, to give the impression as if the elections were rigged. And those of us who refuse to accept what the PPP wants to push down the roads, because we refuse to accept that, folks like Freddie Kissoon get upset. And when moral values, so to speak, right? Yep, sorry about that. I don't know what happens, but you know, that's the internet that we have in our studio, right? Please do forgive me, but it's the internet in our studio. As I was saying about the electoral fraud and so forth, let me ask you before we get to our guest, why do you think, why do you think that the PPP is so afraid of the elections petition? I repeat, why do you think the PPP is afraid of the elections petition? Why do you suppose they're afraid of the elections petition? The PPP is afraid of the elections petition because they know what is inside of those SOPs. They know exactly what is inside of those SOPs. So they have done every single thing. I repeat, they have done every single thing to stymie the process because they are afraid, but yet they have their surrogates who write and write and talk and talk and publish their part of the story. But they're not going to talk about these 47 ballot boxes. They're not going to talk about why the PPP is so afraid of the SOPs. Look at this. 4,864 absent voters. That is a heck of a lot. 4,864 absent voters. Look at this. 150 stuffed ballot boxes. 150 stuffed ballot boxes. 47 ballot boxes without statutory or documents. Look at this here. 1,278 missing oaths of identity. Missing oaths of identity. So help me God. And these folks want you to believe that when we speak and when we try to push back the narrative of the PPP about rigged elections, some of their surrogates get vexed, they get upset, they write all manners of things, all manner of things about us, all things. I don't know. It's Friday evening. Welcome to the show. My name is Mark Benschop. We're going to rock and roll this evening, and here why we're going to get started right away on Straight Up. Those folks who are on the ground listening to us via your radio, you know, it's always a pleasure to be in your homes. It's always a pleasure to be in your car, in your minibus, wherever you are. And you know, it's always a pleasure to have someone like me around you, right? Good. Sorry. Just trying to be a little full of myself. It's Friday evening. Good evening to all of you. All the beautiful people across Guyana. Good evening to you. Let's get ready to rock and roll. First, we have Ganesh Mahipal with us. Ganesh, with the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, extrajudicial killings, and so forth and so on, seem to have started all over again under this installed regime. But let's begin with the pandemic. Every day, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 persons are dying as a result of this pandemic. And the regime seem to they're not getting the message at all. Your take on that, sir. And good night to you.
Good night, Mark. Good night to all your viewers also. I believe that everybody is aware by now that the People's Progressive Party has no interest in protecting the lives of our people, and their greater focus is on economic empowerment for themselves and basically putting monies in their own pockets. There are a number of schools that are currently closed after reopening for just a short while, all because people are tested positive for COVID-19. A number of schools in Region 3 had to close their doors and send the children back home. And you know, I did raise this concern before the reopening of schools. I asked the installed Minister of Education if there are any consideration for children, pupils, and students to go to school in casual wear as opposed to uniform, because children are growing, and with the heavy cost of living and with the hardship that is being faced by many, if not all, why would you want parents to invest in school uniform when there is no certainty of keeping the schools open? And if this is a trial period, why not accept the children in casual wear until a decision can be made as to whether the schools will remain open or will have to be closed? Many parents, Mark, many parents have complained about them investing heavily in the purchase of uniform materials, sewing of uniform, other expensive gears for the preparation of school, and in less than a week or two, they had to close the school because of positive cases, and there is no assurance as to whether there will be a reopening again of the schools. But their monies were already utilized, and they would have considered it as wasteful spending because it cannot be utilized at this present moment for the purpose intended. And that is a concern that I raised earlier with installed Manik Chan, but she seems not to want to care, because as far as she is concerned, the vouchers must go out, the stores that are aligned to the PPP must get the monies, they must sell the uniform materials and so on. Persons who are aligned to the PPP must get money in their pockets, because that is what seems to be more important to this installed regime as opposed to protecting the lives of our people. But there is an also need for me to make a critical point. A number of persons who are fully vaccinated and a number of persons who received their first dose of the vaccine are tested positive for the COVID 19, and they have been down with symptoms. And the issue really is, why is the government focusing heavily on vaccination when the vaccination does not prevent you from getting COVID 19? Now, let me be pellucid. I am not against the vaccine. I do believe that everybody should take their vaccines. I do believe that the science has proven that with the vaccines, you reduce the chances of dying from COVID 19. But the choice must be there. And this issue of mandatory vaccine is one that is creating pandemonium, and it's creating havoc in the minds of people, because the Minister of Health, the installed Minister of Health, is silent when it comes to providing vital and, and credible information on these vaccines. People are asking burning questions. They would like to know, how is it that these vaccines were transported from its place of manufacture to the place where it is right now? And the third man that is involved in this transportation, the famous Sheikh, who apparently made millions of dollars on the vaccine, did he transport these vaccines within the right temperature, as was mentioned earlier, because there's certain temperature that these vaccines got to be transported under? We will like to know whether the efficacy of the vaccine is still there, because the question remains that there is no information in the public space concerning these vaccines. We will like to know if it is the authentic vaccine. We will like to know if it is the legitimate vaccine that is in Guyana. These are questions that Frank Anthony must answer. We recently see that WHO did not give approval for the Sputnik V vaccine, but they were on record saying that WHO will give approval for the Sputnik V vaccine. And look how it has come back to bite them. This administration is wayward, callous, and misdirected. They seem not to know what is their objective, so they just operate loosely. And in their operation, they are putting people's lives at risk, and it's creating havoc in our country. I want to also say, with reference to the vaccination, that persons must be allowed to make that choice, because there are many people with underlying conditions, and they have to judge whether the vaccine that they want to put into their system is one that they can live with, knowing the consequences can flow from it. So I do not want to be a part of no team that supports mandatory vaccine. I do not want to be a part of no team that supports mandatory vaccine, because I do not wish to play no role with reference to if anything bad should happen. I believe that the administration installed, albeit, should focus greatly on the preventative measures. Provide the schools and public spaces and public buildings with sanitization material or sanitizers. Provide them with regular sanitizing them regularly. Face masks, hand sanitizer, uh, alcohol spray, whatever it is that was mentioned as the preventative measures. Build water troughs so that people can wash their hands frequently, hand soap, and all the other preventative measures. Have a greater focus on that. And if you have a greater focus on that, then you are better able to guarantee your people with greater safety, as opposed to having all of these protests that are happening, all because you want mandatory vaccine so that your friends can get money in their pockets as you buy the vaccines. Utter
Uh,
nonsense,
we,
disgraceful and wicked.
we get that, wicked indeed and very vindictive, but people have to protect themselves and their family members as well. I'm pro-vac. We have, and I get your point, Honorable Member MP Ganesh Mahipal. We have Dr. Van West Charles will be on shortly to speak on that. But quickly before we go, because we have your colleague all the way in region number 2, that's Essequibo, Sherwin Holder, the Honorable MP, to give us an update on what's happening. What's your take quickly on this recent extrajudicial killing of Mr. Oren Bosque?
Mark, first of all, what I want to say is that the facts are that the SWAT team broke into the home under the claim that they were doing a raid, and that has caused Mr. Gordon to lose his life. And the family is traumatized. 2 children and close family of the deceased, and relatives, friends, and an entire neighborhood or community, and by extension, the country. Now, I have no expertise in the field of security, but common sense would teach anyone that if a team such as the SWAT team, the Special Weapons and Tactical Unit, would go on an operation, one would expect that there is some degree of intelligence, and that they are operating on intelligence that is credible. So even if you want to associate the gentleman with, let's assume, cocaine or guns or anything that is illegal, one would assume that your intelligence is so credible that you would come out of the operation with something to show or to link. But the police, the SWAT team, came out of that operation after doing what they did with nothing else but a dead human being, a dead 29-year-old with 2 children, 2 adolescents, and a wife that are all traumatized. Did they find anything illegal? Were there anything that they can point to in terms of this operation that they went with? Did they find anything to associate it with the gentleman and with the family? This is a shameful move. And then you have the top cop trying to find out who gave the orders. Those information are things that I don't know, Mark. I don't know. I can't fathom the what actually took place there. I really
What,
can't. And then you have
what,
a story with them saying that the man was under the bed and that he was fighting for get the gun and that caused him to be shot. And then you have the evidence that is showing differently where the blood stain is on the mattress of the bed. The wife is pointing to it there.
you
The
know, you know,
police have
you know, Mr.
serious, and let me tell you something. Let me make this point before you come in.
Sure.
This incident requires an international inquiry, an international commission of inquiry. That family and this country needs closure on this matter. And the same zeal and zest and focus that the PPP had on other inquiries to bring closure to families, this family equally deserves closure. And they should be given a fair trial, and the police should not investigate themselves. An independent international commission of inquiry should be set up forthwith to deal with this matter, and let us get to the bottom of it. Thank you.
Well said, Honorable Member of Parliament Ganesh Mahipal. Thank you so much. We'll close off with Mr. Ganesh Mahipal. On that, have a great weekend, sir. And thank you for your contributions this evening.
Thank you, Mark, and good night to you and all your viewers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ganesh Mahipal. We go all the way over to region number 2. Ganesh was in or is in region number 3. We go to region number 2 now. Honorable MP Sherwin Holder. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening to your viewers also.
Yeah, I know. And one of the reasons, let me say to our listeners that the bandwidth and the internet service sucks in Essequibo. Hence, we are not seeing you. So it's okay. Now, what's the situation? What's the latest there with the protest and the people being so angry with this police execution of Mr. Boston?
Mark, I'm currently in Dartmouth community as we speak at this minute. The mood here is one of sorrow and one of anger at the same time. Now, at this current moment, there is what I would say a temporary shift in focus at this very minute. There is a religious function, a prayer service session within the community, of which a large number of the residents are in attendance. And so there isn't much protesting at this very minute. There is still debris on the northern end of the community. There is some debris there on the road, almost wholly blocking the road. At the southern end, which we saw the fire and the all the commotion, that is currently clear, and there is a unit, a police presence at that end, just outside of the community. Also, the fire service, a fire truck is there in the distance. Okay, let me allow you to field your questions.
No, that is okay. So we understand, and thank you so much for the description. I know you're busy there on the ground. Let me take this time to commend you for what you have been doing over the past couple of days. So the people in the community in Dartmouth, Essequibo there, they're all coming together, regardless of their religious background, regardless of their ethnic background, whatever. They're all joining hands and calling for justice. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly, Mark. Persons who are not familiar with the community might get a negative perception from certain things that are out there. But the reality on the ground is that there are a number of churches and other religious institutions within this community. Is a very big community. Over 1,000 persons reside here. And as I said, youth section of the community is currently in a worship prayer session currently as we speak. So these people are not hooligans, and as some might think they are. What struck me when this uproar started, there were and continues to be a number of Indo-Guyanese within the community who come here from far and wide, the neighboring communities, to give support to the people of Dartmouth. We know that Dartmouth is predominantly an Afro-Guyanese community, but you might be surprised to come in here and find a lot of Indo-Guyanese giving the kind of support that is needed in this time. And I must say, the entire community is united around this issue. They are fed up with the police. They are fed up with the system. They are fed up with discrimination. They are fed up with the injustices that are meted out. That was meted out in the past to them, and also what they're seeing in other communities. So this revolt, if you can call it, is not only about the death. It surrounds the death of Mr. Orrin Boston that has sparked this revolt, but there are deep-seated issues. There are burning issues in the minds of these people, and so they are venting. And this unfortunate situation presented an opportunity for them to stand up against the regime and what it's doing to many communities across the country.
Well said. And again, I commend the people there for standing together in that community. There ought to be justice. There will be justice. And let them know that there are people even outside of that community, people in other regions of Georgetown and outside of Guyana are with them. Justice must be done. Again, give my regards to the folks on the ground. Tell them keep the struggle up, of course, in a peaceful way. I could understand what their sentiments are towards the police. I was made to understand that the commander, Miss Griffith, for that division, that region, has visited the family. How happy are the family with what the commander had to say, from your standpoint?
Based on the information that I have, yes, she did visit this morning. Sometime this morning, she and her team visited, and they had some discussion with the family. The family is still grieving, still angry. She revealed some bit of information. I was told that she revealed who the shooter is. She revealed the identity. The larger public still does not know who that person is, but I am told that she revealed the identity.
We're glad that she, meaning the commander, Ms. Griffith,
yes,
has done that, and I think we some of us know the name. We are not sure of that individual because there were a bunch of SWAT officers on that mission. We don't know who really pulled the trigger. We don't know if Honorable MP, if they're trying to give the lowest ranking member the blame, or tell him to take the blame for some other senior rank. All the other members on that group, that is what the commander should be doing. Give the names of all those members, not just one little constable who allegedly pulled the trigger. It could be some senior rank on that group who pulled the trigger. It could be some phantom guy who was part of that group pulled the trigger, or some security guard for some big wealthy businessman. We don't know, but I get your point. It strikes me as kind of weird that the commander would go to the family and give a name of an officer and say that he will be charged on Monday. Don't worry. I find that very, very strange if it's accurate, that is exactly what she said. I find that strange, Mr. MP. But
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. I believe that the people of Dartmouth is not does not trust the information that is that was provided for obvious reasons. From the beginning of this incident, you had a lot of what I would term perception of a cover up by the police. You had a fictitious statement being issued, and let me tell you this, Mark. I personally spoke with the commissioner of police when he was allowed to visit the family, and I said to him, "Well, you are here now, and you have the other side from the key witnesses, who is the wife, and you have the mother and other family members." And so I asked him the question. I said, "Sir, as a matter of fact, I said to him, I said, I think that you should withdraw that disrespectful statement, because you're now on the ground and you're hearing from the horse's mouth what exactly transpired." And I pressed him, and he sort of downplayed. So I asked him, I said, "Man, in the interim, can't you remove that statement in the interim while you're conducting this investigation?" And he shied away from it. And that tells a lot. That tells you a lot about the police force and what is actually transpiring within that organization.
it certainly tells a lot, Mr. MP, Sherwin Holder. I know tomorrow is going to be a busy day. I know you've been busy all day today, all night. You're going to be busy with those church services, the prayers and so forth the folks are having there. Again,
Yes.
give me regards to all. Thank you for all the work that you're doing, and keep an eye on what's happening there in your region, the region
Yes,
that
sure,
you have
Mark.
been elected to represent. Thank you so much, Mr. MP.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having me.
All right, MP Sherwin Holder there for you guys, giving you a rundown. It is based on what we're hearing that the commander allegedly, mind you, give the name of the shooter, the alleged shooter. And now I find that strange that a commander will visit the victim's family members and say to them, "We got the name of the shooter. He's a constable. His name is so and so, and he will be charged on Monday." Really? If that is true, all I have to ask, really? Is that how police work is done in any part of the world? Now, I know Miss Griffith. Yeah, I kind of know all of them, right? I know Miss Griffith. I don't know. Something is strange about this. And if it is true that she gave the name of the alleged shooter, and that person happens to be a little constable, I find it strange that that's going to happen, or that's happening. I also find it strange that he's going to be charged on Monday. I find that very, very strange, with no statement from the police department as yet. Absolutely nothing. I don't know. We're smarter than that. But we're going to get more into that matter when we have Mr. Paul Slow to discuss that with us and more. We want to ask Mr. Paul Slow about the SWAT team and all these different things. He was there. He knows about the SWAT team. He knows about the Black Clothes Police. He knows about those things. We will ask him that. But before we get to Mr. Paul Slow, we have Dr. Richard Van West Charles. We want to spend a couple minutes to talk about this vaccine, because people are dying left, right, and center because of the COVID-19. The hospital is crowded, overcrowded. Let's go to Dr. Van West Charles. Dr. Van West Charles, thank you so much for being patient with us this evening, man. Good to see you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mark, and good evening to your viewers. The discussion you've been having is a very important one, though, with respect to the security of the country. And this is a pattern that we're seeing with the police. And I think this issue, none of the issues so far with the Henry boys and other incidents that we've seen, none of these issues can be taken lightly. And really, we've come to a point where Commissioner Hoppy has to answer. He needs, either he answers or steps down. I agree with Parliamentarian Mahipal that they cannot investigate themselves. And therefore, what you're seeing in the main, it's a bias when different groupings do different things within different communities. The reaction to young blacks is different. And I want to say to you that you're getting to the point where the police force is apparently ill-trained to deal with issues within the community. Or there are a increasing number of rogue elements. One has to ask yourself, why during the administration of APNU AFC, the number of incidents that occurred were far less than what seems to be occurring now. Granted, you had different commissioners. And so it begs the question of whether Commissioner Hoppy is out of his depth and unable to manage the police force in a way, because these procedures are way off base. And I'm sure Paul Slow would address them, but this can't be normal. And I honestly believe that he needs to step aside at this point in time, because I don't think he is managing the force well, and it's probably a demonstration of ill preparedness of many others at the top.
You know, apart from not managing the force well, Dr. Van West Charles, many are of the view that he's not managing the force at all. Many are of the view that he's not even in control of the force. And so we are seeing the evidence of that. He, as acting commissioner of police, has admitted that he was unaware of such a team going into the region for any sort of search. He is unaware. If he is unaware, then who gave the order? If he cannot give the order, well, then it's time that maybe,
I think it's an important call to be made right now for these folks to have body cams, so that the citizen can have some evidence. But there's so much corruption around you that you never know what is going to happen.
They're going to put scotch tape on the front. They're going to tamper with the body cam. They're going to do all sorts of things.
So those are some concerns. But any right-thinking person can really see that the force is not managed properly. And I think in many cases, we need to move away and ensure that professional police officers, and I'm not saying, because you have people who have come up and held different ranks, but they are not professionally trained people. And I think we need to revisit the situation and ensure that we have well-trained people. You know, when the government did not embrace the proposal from the British with respect to reform in the police force, that was a serious mistake. And we need probably to look at this very carefully, but more so it is now a requirement for citizens to be alert in terms of how they're being treated by many of these young policemen.
All right, Dr. Richard Van West Charles giving his take on the killing, the murder, the brutal murder of Mr. Boston, Orrin Boston. The police force, they're currently in shambles. Mr. Hoppy, as good as he is as a cop, a lot of people have been talking some good things about him. But when he became the acting top cop, Hoppy has become sloppy. Dr. Charles, the vaccine, COVID-19, it's on the rise in Guyana. What is your take on what's going on? Because it's out of control, and the installed regime and even Dr. Frank Anthony, they seem far off. They don't know what is happening. Your take?
Well, Mark, we in the last discourse we had on this matter, we highlighted the mismanagement of the program. And it's all over the place, whereby you're not having the transparency that is required. You know, today they visited Brazil, Bonfim. They went over to Bonfim, Bovista, because of what is happening on the border. And you have now, in the Aishalton area, the school had to be closed because 6 kids came down in regions in grades 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 6, and they had to close the school down. Now, this is the level of children who are being infected. Then, as I understand it, some of the kids never came to school with masks because the parents haven't got the capacity, the money, the availability of masks within that community. So it clearly tells you that these folks are not really looking at the program properly. I agree. I have said this issue before about the preparedness of the schools. I am saying it again. The schools, in terms of water and sanitation, is a far cry from what should be with respect to the preventative measures of COVID. And why are they trying to force a situation when you know that it is required, that you need the water, you need the soap, you need other sanitizers to be available, you need people to be cleaning the classrooms on a day during the day? So what have they put in place? It's both the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. And that is why the teachers are reacting in the way that they're reacting. And the aspect of trust is where the point is. People are not trusting because the way they are providing information is not in a obviously transparent manner.
You know, 1 second, Dr. Van. Oh, there you go. You were talking close up. Yeah, we were just seeing your mouthpiece, but people, I'm seeing the comments. People are agreeing with you 100%. Recently, Dr. Van West Charles, Dr. Frank Anthony said something about a delay of 80,000 second dose of the Sputnik V. I hope I got that correct. A delay of 80,000. What is your take on that?
Again, it's if you're not managing the program, and how can you have a delay and at the same time introduce these mandatory measures? You got to be crazy. You cannot be knowing fully well that you have a delay, and you are now forcing people. Ensure that the offices, if you are concentrating on the public sector, because it doesn't seem as if they want to deal with the private sector. So concentrate on the private sector, rearrange the offices, have the social distancing, ensure that the sanitizers are in place, ensure that the masks are worn during office hours. When people come, ensure that they are checked. But remember, people have got concerns. Some people are fearful of needles. I was speaking to a woman just the day before yesterday, and I asked her, I said, did you get your vaccination? She said, man, I had a terrible reaction once with a needle, and I am afraid. I said, well, I will come with you. I will talk with you and work this through. But you have to be aware of the concerns, and you have to provide people with information. And if their physicians must be the ones, or their close friends who are nurses, etc., to work with them so that they can understand what is happening. But you can't just be a bully in the way that you're carrying on, and at the same time you can't satisfy the requirements. It doesn't make sense. You have to do it. I think everyone now is just beginning to have a reaction to the situation and making the achievement of herd immunity further in a distance because the government is refusing to listen, is refusing to change its position. Now, today on the border in Letem, they said, okay, there's nobody going across because variants are circulating in Brazil and variants are over here. But at the same time, well, the Brazilians are saying, well, nothing will cross. The border is closed and we will see what will happen economically. Some time ago, we spoke about a border program. We should have had a program between on both sides working together to look at the movement in the border. It was jointly managed, should be jointly managed between Guyana and Brazil. We should have had that arrangement. During the 80s, we had that arrangement with Venezuela with respect to malaria. We have the arrangement with respect to foot and mouth. And therefore, this should have been a border program, jointly managed, where they're sharing data, they're sharing the information, so that there are better controls in terms of what is happening on both sides of the border. But that is why we're saying, let us all sit at the table. And I think former Minister of Health, Walter Lawrence, today at the press conference said, look, this is not a political matter. Let us not make the PNC, the opposition, we are very clear that this is not a political matter. Let us sit. This is a national security issue. And if the government can just listen, be transparent, and let us move this program forward, we can do it. But if they maintain their stance, you're going to have serious problems in this country with respect to COVID.
You know, Dr. Charles, I heard the Honorable Chairwoman of the People's National Congress Reform today at her press conference, and she said that when she was the Minister of Health, they wrote to the opposition, inviting them to come to the table so that all can play their role in going after this virus, the pandemic, and to reduce infection rate, lives, save lives, and all these things. They refused. Now that they have been installed, they are refusing to even invite the opposition to the table. You know what? I have every single night we're on, we talk about the opposition not being at the table. It is pretty obvious by now that the installed PPP regime, the incompetent PPP regime, and the incompetent Minister of Health feel they know it all. But people are dying every single day. Almost 800 persons have already died. They know it all. They want people to die. Y'all are begging too much to join the table. They don't want you guys on the table. The Guyanese people are smart enough, and next elections, whenever that is held, the Guyanese people will punish the PPP because the PPP is responsible for the hundreds of deaths in the country at this moment. They're refusing help, knowing that they're incompetent.
And I want to say, look, there isn't a full understanding in all quarters. And even within our courts, I think the lawyers need to be calling expert witnesses, because the issue of testing, the more you test, the more it serves two objectives. It gives the individual the information with respect to their own health status. That's one. And two, it provides data for the surveillance of what is to happen. So the testing becomes, the more you test, it is better. So all of the schools, I heard, well, now that they've shut down Aishalton, you have to test all the entire school population. And as I mentioned on your program, testing, if you're opening schools, testing on a weekly basis is what is recommended. And it will help you to know if any of the children, any of the teachers, or any of the workers in the school are infected and therefore you need to take action with respect to the entire population and the community from which they come. So let us sit down and discuss. And you know, I would hope that the ABC countries that are donating vaccines would try to at least use whatever influence they have in terms of bringing some sense to this situation. Because they ought to know, in the realm of a democracy, and if you're talking about we want a democracy, all actors need to be at the table in terms of a matter like this. It is not one side and you hope to achieve the results. There is no way you will. And people have a serious distrust, which is contributing to the hesitancy. And they ought to understand where that distrust is. They should know by now where that distrust is. They should have some sense and stop going around the bush if we are serious about the people.
You know, the sad thing is, Dr. Van West Charles, they're not serious. The PPP regime is not serious about the people. Every day we see the frustrations. Every single day, the cane harvesters and the quarantine. Albion today, they protested. Yesterday, they protested. In Dartmouth, we have a protest because of a police murder. Every day, we are seeing protest upon protest upon protest in Guyana. And I'll say this, Dr. Van West Charles, the pot is boiling. You mentioned the ABC countries. They're all silent on a lot of issues, but they're not silent about investments coming into Guyana and the oil investments and so forth. They seem more concerned about maybe their friends and cronies and others just coming into Guyana to invest, to make hundreds of millions of US dollars, billions of US dollars. That is more important to them. So we're not going to hear the voices on these sort of human rights violations, extrajudicial killings, and the vaccine, the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic by this incompetent installed regime. Dr. Van West Charles, I know we're looking at the time. We have Mr. Paul Slow. I'm told he has just arrived in the studio. In fact, he's been in the studio for a while, but we're now seeing him in studio. Quickly before we go, there was an announcement today by the Honorable Chairwoman of the party, the PNCR, that Congress will be held by the end of 2021. I see you're smiling. Let us hear from you now. Are you officially putting yourself up as a candidate to be nominated?
Well, as I said to you, I stand ready. For you to be a candidate, you have to receive the nominations. And that is a process by itself, which means the power really in terms of the nominations and the voting, etc., rests with the membership. So we have to get to the next stage of having the Congress committee established, which more or less should be next week. And then everything will flow from there. But once there are nominations, I stand ready. I have the capacity to lead, and therefore I await the process. But we're working to ensure that everything is going to be transparent and that there is going to be the accountability that is required for a Congress at this time.
I saw that.
Taking into consideration all of the requirements of the pandemic.
We all saw that big smile on your face when I said that Congress will be held, according to what we heard, will be held by the end of 2020, and you smile.
21, that is.
2021, my apologies. You smile because you know that you are prepared to be nominated and contest a very tight race. That's what it's going to be. Anything quickly before we go that you want our listeners to hear, sir?
No, I think Guyana is going to be in a difficult position. And anyone who's listening who may have influence with respect to the government and the leaders in the government, that we need to recognize that this issue is going to be a critical issue. And the other matter which is emerging as a major problem is that of race. And these two matters can seriously destroy us as a people, as a society. And so we need, let me say to you, if COVID continues the way you're going, GCOM will have a serious task. We are calling for a new list, but really GCOM would have a serious task of preparing a very new list of voters, because quite a few people would have died. And the way that they're approaching things, that you're going to have the same mess all over again in terms of the management of the elections. So I want to request some of the influencers in the PPP administration to let us have good sense prevail and ensure that we can put things back on track in a way that this country can prosper. And we can have difference, but we must not have difference that leads us to murder, to hate, and destruction.
Well said, Dr. Van West Charles. I see we have our good friend, Mr. Paul Slow, CCH, DC, DSM, and all these things there, an honorable gentleman. I'm wondering whether he will throw his hat in the race too.
Not a politician, Mark.
He didn't say which race, Paul.
Yeah,
Exactly.
He's speaking to our politics. I'm not going to get involved in politics.
The race for the next commissioner of police. I didn't say which race. Thank you, Dr. Van.
Thank you very much, and good evening.
Have a good night.
Good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Good evening to you, Mr. Slow. How are you?
Good evening, Mark. I'm fine, thanks.
In light of this pandemic, this cruel pandemic, this deadly pandemic, how are you doing? How are you handling it?
I'm safe at the moment and doing everything to remain safe. I'm following all the COVID protocols. My job demands that I do that. Hand washing, social distancing, vaccination, and the full work. So I'm doing everything that is possible for myself and my family, for everyone to be safe.
Absolutely correct, and you're looking pretty sharp. Let's get ready. Let's get ready to rock and roll on the main issue. But before we get to the main issue, which is the SWAT team swooping down on people in Essequibo, shot and killed a businessman out there in Dartmouth, Essequibo. Before we get to that, there was some ruling today. There was a ruling today or yesterday concerning the police service commission, of which you are still the chairman. What's the latest on that matter? Can you fill our listeners in, please, sir?
Well, the first correction is that the life of the commission came to an end in August. August the 9th was the last day of the commission. So there's no police service commission at the moment. I am not any longer the chairman of the police service commission. That life, 3 years, 2018 to 2021, and that has ended. Now, the matter yesterday had to do with the action brought by the commission in respect of the purported suspension of the commission by the president. As many persons may be aware, an officer or several officers challenged the commission. The promotions that were to be made at the end of the year, they challenged it. It went before the Chief Justice, and the Chief Justice threw out the challenge. Now, before that was done, the President purported to suspend the Service Commission, and we knew all along that that would have occurred, because it was clear, as I was saying from the beginning, that the whole intention was to make sure that if certain persons weren't promoted, then they were going to dismantle the commission, and therefore they proceeded to do so in a very illegal way, and that was challenged. Now, in challenging the decision, the president was named as one of the respondents, and that matter was ruled on yesterday, and Justice Gino Prasad ruled that the president enjoys immunity from all prosecution or all actions like that, and therefore the president's name should be removed. So that was as they call it in law, the interlocutory issue. Now, the main issue has to do with the manner in which the president went about trying to suspend the commission. Now, most persons were blindsided. Again, I was not. The judge was, when the Attorney General informed that they had now filed a motion yesterday. They filed an action yesterday to seek to throw out the substantive issue, claiming that, well, the commission is no longer a living entity, in that the life came to an end in August, and so therefore that is what transpired yesterday. Now, the lawyers representing the commission will file a response by Tuesday, and responses are going to be filing, you know, it goes. And I think the next oral argument before the judge will be on the 10th of November of this year. So that's where it is at the moment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paul Slow, for giving us that update. We understand what the current install regime wants to do, which is to hijack the Police Service Commission, hence their problem with you, an honorable chairman of that commission, along with some of your other members as well. Mr. Slow, let's begin with this here now. This guy, Ganesh, not Ganesh Mahipal, but Ganesh, this guy, that's his name, a taxi driver from Port Morant. He allegedly dosed his wife with quercetyl and burnt her, 95% of her body. He escaped out of the country, I'm assuming through Timeri International Airport. A wanted bulletin was set up for him. He was allowed to go to the airport. His bag checked in, passport stamped, got on the plane, reached all the way to John F. Kennedy International Airport, where he was apprehended and sent back. Your take on this guy, wanted, but yet turned up at the airport and left the country. Your take on that?
Well, it shows that the system is porous, and thankfully the Americans were able to intervene and to apprehend him. But the question is, I hope some proper investigation is done as to determine the whole process. When was the bulletin issued? Were the immigration authorities advised that this gentleman bulletin has been issued for him? And if so, how is it that he was able to leave the country and end up in the United States of America? So question needs to be asked and answers have to be given.
Lots of questions indeed, lots and lots, but we're not hearing anything about that other than they're praising the fact that he has been apprehended, or he was apprehended there at JFK Airport and sent back to Guyana. He has been charged. He has been charged, and let's see what happens there. Let's get to this SWAT team. This SWAT team came into existence, I think, sometime when then acting Commissioner of Police, Leroy Brummel, he was there. We heard about this formation of the SWAT team. Can you walk us through, since you were a very senior officer back then, can you walk us through about the formation of the SWAT team and break every single thing down for our listening audience, please?
Well, Mark, let me just give a background into SWAT teams. I mean, SWAT team started in the United States in the mid-1960s. And if you were to do research, you will find that there was an incident in Texas where a lone gunman, having killed his mother and his wife, went to the tower, the Texas University in Texas, the one of the universities, fully armed, rifle. He was well prepared, water, sandwiches, and he sniped and killed many, many people. And the police were, because he had the advantage of high ground, they were unable to apprehend him in a timely fashion. So then law enforcement agencies saw the need to establish some unit, specially trained, specially selected, specially equipped to deal with incidents of that nature. Then that the idea caught on with the Los Angeles Police Department, and they are credited as the first persons, the first department to put together SWAT teams to deal with what they had then, this frequency of bank robberies, because men were holding up banks, and the ordinary police with their 6-shooter revolvers were outgunned and were not able to adequately deal with these bank robbers. So the idea of putting together special police units to deal with these incidents came about. And as a matter of fact, it is known now as SWAT, Special Weapons and Tactics, but initially it was Special Weapons Attack Teams, and they felt that that was not a proper description for a police unit, so it became Special Weapons and Tactics. And those units are formed for specific purposes, not for the ordinary run-of-the-mill policing. The research will tell you that they deal with terrorist situations, hostage situations, warrants, searches involving drug cartels, drug lords. Those high-risk situations were the ones that SWAT teams dealt with. Now, in Guyana, I was in the force when the idea of the SWAT team came about, and I could tell you, I was always opposed to the SWAT team from a tactical point of view, because the government and business community were behind, they were pushing for the SWAT team. And my contention was that given the purpose of a SWAT team, as I outlined earlier, there was never any issue really or any incident in Guyana where the police units, the TSU, and those people weren't able to resolve properly. And I argued that what you needed was information, where these criminals were, and they had the resources to deal with them. But when I left in 2010, sometime shortly thereafter, the SWAT team was formed, and the forces were selected and trained, and it continued to operate. And I always question whether it is a useful use of the limited resources you have, because I don't see that many incidents in Guyana that requires the involvement of a professional SWAT team. So that is the background to the SWAT team. And then I discovered much later, 2019 or thereabout, that even though the SWAT team was formed some years ago, I don't think up to now there's any real standard operational procedure, any standing order as to how this team should operate. There's no structure to say, well, it should be headed by a particular rank, and that is a recipe for chaos and disaster. Unfortunately, we had one recently on the Essequibo coast. And just to give you an example, I recall a few years ago, I think a deputy superintendent was in charge. I understand now that there's some junior assistant superintendent is in charge of the team. But you have to have, when you have a SWAT team in any force, not only in Guyana, you have to have clear guidelines as to the operation of the SWAT team. Who is the person with the authority to call out the SWAT team? One would not expect any commander or any junior officer to say, well, look, there's a situation, called SWAT. You have to have a protocol as to how this should be called out. So when I listen and I heard that senior people are saying, well, they did not know that the SWAT team had gone to the Essequibo coast, something is definitely wrong. How can the SWAT team leave? Because they are based in Georgetown, I understand. How can they leave their base and travel all the way to Essequibo without the knowledge of senior people in the force? Something is wrong. And then you have to have, for a SWAT team, you have to have clear rules of engagement. As you must remember that the SWAT team is a unit within the Guyana Police Force, so they come under all the rules and regulation and disciplinary processes of the Guyana Police Force. So that when they operate, they should operate under those rules and guidelines. They're not an entity unto themselves. They are not. So things like the rules of engagement, when you are allowed to shoot, all of those things they should they are governed by. They are governed by those things, even though they are specially equipped. They have they should have body armor. special weapons, as the name suggests, special tactics, and all of that, so that when you get into, and I say again, not any run-of-the-mill wanted man who perhaps assaults somebody and is there, unless he is violent, he's barricaded, and perhaps he's armed, and the local police are ill-equipped or unable to deal with the situation. That is when you activate your SWAT team. And when they go there, is careful planning and careful execution of the operation. It's not a wild arrangement. You just run wild, kick it down door and run. It should not be operating like that. It should not be operating like that. Sadly, the gentleman there lost his life. And I understand that an investigation will follow. But there are some very disturbing indications as to what transpired and all of that. Very, very disturbing indeed.
Before we get to that, those disturbing information, Mr. Paul Slow, can you walk us through the difference, explain the difference between in my description, the notorious Black Clothes Police that was responsible for so many extrajudicial killings in Guyana. What's the difference between the Black Clothes then and this so-called SWAT team now?
Well, the Black Clothes had a bad reputation. I think that's public knowledge. It was a bad reputation, and I would think that when the SWAT was formulated, one of the intentions at least would have been to make sure that you are a professional body to respond to this high-risk situation, and as I emphasize, a professional body responding to these well-trained, well-equipped, and to respond to these situations. But given the action there, one questions the level of training and the level of professionalism.
And the fact that you mentioned earlier that this SWAT team is being headed by a junior rank, does that come as any surprise to you?
Well, it is. Well, not really, but it should not be. It doesn't surprise me now, given the way things have been occurring over the past year in particular. A lot of confusion and a lot of chaos, not only in that area, but many areas. So even though you're disappointed, I am disappointed. I don't think I can say that I'm surprised of these type of developments.
Certainly not surprised at all. If you're now joining us, we have Mr. Paul Slow with us, no stranger to you guys, a policeman who has given close to 40 years of service, hope I'm correct there, to the Guyanese people in terms of protecting and serving the entire Guyanese population. Let me say this right now, happening there in Essequibo, Dartmouth, Essequibo. This is the bridge. It's happening right now. Residents are frustrated, and rightly so. If you look at that bridge now, it is this bridge here during the day. And this is what's happening now, this is what is happening now, even as the pastors and the pandits and the mages and so forth are probably out there in Dartmouth praying. There are residents who are saying they're not going to give up. They're not going to surrender until there is justice. Before we get to what's happening in the Essequibo there, this incident happened about 2 or 3 years ago, where the head of the SWAT team then, Mr. Moti Doki, was caught allegedly transporting black label whiskey for a businessman on the quarantine. He was caught there on the quarantine, and the allegations were leveled against him. He was kicked out of the force. Now that the install regime is back, they have reinstated him. Your take on this whole incident as it pertains to allegations leveled against a senior member, the head of the SWAT team at that time?
Well, I'm not aware that he's reinstated. I am not aware that he's reinstated. And I mean, you're being careful by saying allegedly, but this is a man who had his fair hearing. He was tried departmentally and he was convicted and he was dismissed. So it's no longer, you can't say it was an allegation as such, because he had due process. And again, it goes to show that even further back than now, something is wrong. This is a case, as you pointed out, this was the man who was in charge of the SWAT based in Georgetown and found himself on the quarantine coast with items suspected to be stolen, to be unlawfully, to be entered into the country unlawfully. And so therefore, again, I say something is wrong. How can that happen? How can a man in charge of such? Well, first of all, one will have to question the selection of the person to be in charge, because if you have someone who appears to be this irresponsible, then something is wrong in that process. Something is wrong in the process.
Something is definitely wrong. You have been listening. You have been hearing the stories. Let us go quickly to what the wife of Mr. Orrin Boston, who was murdered by members of the police, this SWAT team, this so-called SWAT team. Let us listen, Mr. Paul Stowe, for about a minute what his wife has to say before I get your opinion.
These people come in, they always kick down the door and they just fire shot just on the left side. And we were sleeping here. If you could see, this is a blood spot. And I was sleeping there on the right side. He was on his left. Just hit him just like this. I left lie down trembling on the bed and he didn't say anything to me. I asked him if I could come off the bed and I said, yes, come off the bed. And that was it. And he told me nothing.
Your decades as a policeman, as a police officer for decades. Your explanation, sir, your opinion on what the wife of Mr. Orrin Boston saying there.
Well, let me say, Mark, let me start off by saying that I understand that the investigation and I expect that the investigation will be done. And therefore, I don't think it will be fair to make too many comments on that aspect of it while an investigation is ongoing. But speaking about the investigation, I want to draw the attention to you and to all those persons, the public, and even members in the force. You know, many times they don't listen to the message. They attack the messenger. So I guess they're going to attack me. But I know that there is perhaps justifiable skepticism in the investigation. I would like to inform that the law, and I refer specifically to the Police Complaints Authority Act, and I brushed it up recently. The Police Complaint Authority Act, Chapter 1702, mandates, Section 12 of that act mandates that an incident of this nature must, and that's the law, the investigation must be supervised by the Police Complaints Authority. I hearing about the Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, and on your program tonight, I understand that people are saying about persons being charged and put before the court as early as Monday. Something is wrong. I want to know if the Police Complaints Authority has had any involvement in this investigation. The law is clear that when an allegation or report is made that the police would have involved in a shooting which resulted in the death of the Police Complaints Authority must be involved to supervise the investigations. And I know the authority now, Justice Ramlal, very good, not to be messed with. And I would like to take the viewers and the listeners back to just a few years ago. There was an incident on the Essequibo coast where a man died in the lockup of Surrey. And the authority supervised that investigation, uncovered a massive cover-up, and policemen were charged. I remember you recommended policemen be charged for murder. Policemen are charged. I think those matters are one or two, I can't remember how many matters currently before the court. So I'm saying to all of those people who are listening, please ensure that the law, the relevant laws are followed, especially the Police Complaints Authority Act, Chapter 1702, that mandates that the Police Complaints Authority, or the authority, Mr. Ramlal, should have a say or should be able to supervise this investigation. He will say, he would look at it, look at the statements that are taken to see if they are properly taken, to make sure that all the relevant statements are taken, and no file can be sent for any legal advice unless the complaint, the Mr. Ramlal signs off on it and gives his opinion as to the thoroughness of the investigation. So I don't know where this rush is coming from to say, well, you're going to charge, and I don't know what evidence they would have collected and all of that, but it is this indecent haste is little troubling to me.
It's a little troubling to you. It's a little troubling to a lot of people, but thank you so much for that explanation. What exactly then, because we know of the Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, headed by it's usually headed by a former senior police officer, and the investigating ranks are all members, serving members or former members of the Guyana Police Force. What exactly is the difference between the OPR and the police service? The Police Complaints Authority, which is headed by former Justice William Ramlal.
Now, the Office of Professional Responsibility, the OPR, is a unit of the Guyana Police Force, staffed by members of the Guyana Police Force. Whether they are retired and returned, they are members of the Guyana Police Force. Now, in the case of the Police Complaints Authority, which has a Special Act 1702, the authority, we used to refer to him as chairman, not really the chairman, the authority, Mr. Ramlal, is appointed through a process. He's appointed by the president. He has independence, and he has a staff, in many cases, experienced former investigators who are answerable to him, not the commissioner of police, not any officer in the force. So one would expect some more independence, some more professionalism, perhaps, from those persons. And that's a big difference. While the OPR is a branch within the Guyana Police Force, the Police Complaints Authority is established by separate law and it's governed by separate law. And as its mandate, as I've indicated before, to investigate matters of this nature, to supervise the investigation, not to investigate necessarily, but to supervise, to see that the investigation is properly done. And to apart from that, when the investigation is finished, to go through and to comment and to make recommendations to the Director of Public Prosecutions as to whether the investigation was properly done or not, and what he thinks should flow therefrom.
And just to give our listeners a little background too, we have the OPR, which is the Office of Professional Responsibility, which is an agency that falls within the Guyana Police Force, as you have indicated. Then we have a separate body, which is the Police Complaints Authority, that is supposed to be independent. It's headed by, usually the person who heads that has to be a former judge. His predecessor, Mr. Ramlal's predecessor, was Cecil Kennard, who was the former chancellor, and that should be an independent agency. And then within the police force, again, they also have their a police advisor, legal advisor, that will review all these matters or matters before they are sent to. Most of the big cases are reviewed by the legal advisor for the police, sent to the DPP. I don't know, lots of confusion indeed. But let me ask you about this here. I'm a bit concerned. This guy, Peter Headley, was gunned down. He was murdered by a member of the Guyana Police Force over 4 months now. The matter was with the OPR. Now we are hearing that the matter is with the Police Complaints Authority, and a decision should be made soon. 4.5 months, Mr. Paul Slow? 4.5 months?
Again, and here is it. You have a case, you see 4.5 months in that case. And in this current case, you're hearing that people are likely to go to court next week. So you want to know, again, what has taken so long in that matter. And then, as I've said before, why the indecent haste in this one to have someone put before the court. And it creates doubt in people's mind. It does not breed confidence in the whole process, and that is what you want. People have to be confident that the process, and the people will follow the law and let the chips fall where they may. But unfortunately, in the situation we have, you don't have that. I can't understand why that matter that you referred to a while ago will take this long, 4 months and going, and you're not hearing anything about it.
4 months, still nothing at all. The relatives of Peter Headley, they want justice. He was shot and killed by a member of the police force under questionable circumstances. But let's go back to Mr. Orrin Boston, shot by a member of a SWAT team, so-called SWAT team, in his arm, punctured his lungs and everything else there. We're seeing it. I don't know. I don't want to ask you any particular question as to this SWAT team barging into the home and shooting this man and killing him, because, as you've said earlier, the matter is currently under investigations and you wouldn't want to venture much into the matter. But are you at all surprised that this SWAT team, this heavily armed SWAT team, kicked down the door, barged in, shot him only one shot? Having said that, would you be surprised if they now claim that it was a mistake? Would you be surprised?
Well, nothing will surprise me with what is going on. Nothing will surprise me. As a matter of fact, I was so upset because when this incident occurred, the first, I think it was early yesterday morning, whenever it was, there was a news item breaking about this gentleman being shot. And when you read the news item, it was intended, in my view, to create a certain image of this gentleman, because the item claimed that he's no stranger to the police. Well, I know that when that term is used, that usually suggests that the person is a criminal. Once you hear a person is no stranger to the police, then it's a euphemism to say that the person is a criminal. So I don't know the gentleman. So that's the impression I got, that this man is some known wanted man in the area. But then what struck me as strange, when you went down to the penultimate or the last paragraph of that report, it then said that this gentleman had some activity, I think 2 weeks ago, which went some activity with a DJ from Georgetown. And the activity went until 7 o'clock the following morning. So right away, he said something wrong. What's the reason for that? What's the relevance of him having an activity that went until 7 o'clock in the morning? So immediately my antennas were up. So something was amiss. The way that story was penned and the way it attempted to portray this gentleman, I was very, very alert as to what will happen after. And Mark, let me say this to you too. It should not escape, it did not escape me, and it should not escape anyone who looked at the sequence of events, that there was a cabinet outreach on the Essequibo coast over the weekend. And this incident occurred immediately thereafter. So questions need to be asked about the proximity of this incident, because I saw photographs in the media which suggests that members of the SWAT unit went up there to provide protection for the cabinet members who were up there, which is not unusual, right? So I am thinking whether it has anything to do with instructions being given for the SWAT to be there and to give instructions, and that line of thought is even urging me more, because when the people are saying, senior people are saying that, look, I don't know that this team was there. So the question is asked, and quite rightly so, who gave instruction for the SWAT team to go there? What were their instructions to go there? Who directed them to these? Because even, let's assume, we don't have to assume the SWAT team went there. I don't think the SWAT team or the head of the SWAT team or the people from town would know these people there. So obviously the local police, I guess, would have given them information, would have given them intelligence as to where they should go to carry out operations and all of that. So this whole thing needs a thorough investigation to find out all of that. What were their instructions? What did they go there to do? Right? The question is asked about the legality of warrants and all of that, and that is a big issue too. That is a big issue. I mean, let's be fair. I am pro-police. I have no bones about that. Having served all these years, I'm pro-police. I'm always willing to give the police, people are going to be annoyed with me, the benefit of the doubt. But sometimes there's no doubt and there's no benefit to be given. The thing is so straightforward. There's no doubt and no benefit. And even if you're going on an operation 3 o'clock in the morning, the manner of execution, I mean, you kick down the door. Let's be reasonable. Because even if a man is in his home and 3 o'clock in the morning, the door banging, no announcement, you are likely to try to protect yourself, or either to escape or to protect yourself. That's a natural reaction. It's a natural reaction. And then the focus, of course, is on the focus, I understand, is on one person. But in my days as a commander, the focus would not have been on the one person. The focus would have been on all of those persons who were there. What information you got? Get there, because I don't think, based on what they're saying, is not the team leader when there. So what did the team leader do? What instruction did the team leader give to this man? Again, rules of engagement. What are your rules of engagement? When should you fire? I was a firearm instructor for many, many years, and I can recite until now, over what, 40 years after, I can recite to you the rules of engagement because they have not changed. And I don't think that any one of the 5 rules would have covered the incident that transpired here. None.
What are the 5 rules? Just
let me tell you the primary rule of engagement and shooting for all policemen, and perhaps even civilians if you're a licensed firearm holder. It says that you may fire, meaning that you may shoot, if you are attacked and you apprehend serious danger to your person and you are unable to defend yourself by any other means. Let me go over that. If someone attacks you and you feel you're going to be injured or killed, they say apprehend serious danger to your person, and you are unable to defend yourself by any other means, then you can fire. This is number 1. That's the primary one. And that's the primary. Well, you have others who would say that if property or order to defend or to protect is attacked and you're unable, if a police station attempt is made to overrun a police station, you're escaping a prisoner, people lawfully held in custody, and they like. But the main one, and the other main ones, if persons perpetrate or are evidently about to perpetrate an outrage among the felony. Example, murder, manslaughter, rape, housebreaking, shop breaking. And again it says, and do not desist after warning, and cannot be deterred or arrested by any other means. There are strict rules of engagement. I remember as a young sergeant many, many years ago, I had the privilege of going to the appeal court to deliver a firearm to the late, great Geoff Haynes. And I had to lecture to him, give him a rundown on the rules of engagement, when you should fire. And having read those rules to him, he sat back and he said, Sarge, are these things taught the ranks of the force? I said, yes, sir, they are. And he said, well, look, let me tell you now, from now on, when they're shooting, when policemen shoot anyone, and those matters come before me, I will have a different outlook. Because he said the things were so comprehensive. Those rules were so comprehensive, right, that he can't understand that if those rules are followed, if people know those rules, why you come and with all these Nancy story when something happens.
Lots and lots of Nancy stories, Mr. Paul Slow. We're looking at the time, but before we go, according to the reports, one member of the so-called SWAT team has been placed under close arrest. He wasn't the only one there, but we were hearing that he was the one who allegedly pulled the trigger. But why only place one under close arrest? Were you the acting commissioner of police or the commissioner of police? What would you have done under this circumstance?
Well, not only the acting commissioner of police, but any proper investigation will start with all those who were there. Would have had to be questioned, detained, and to get exactly what role they played in the whole thing. Because one man might have shot, but one might have done the shooting. But then we're hearing that doors were kicked down, and therefore, so they have something in law called accessory, and the people should know that, because they trumped up a charge against myself and Conway, saying that we conspire to commit a fraud, and therefore they know about conspiracy and they know about accessory. So I would think that in a situation like that, not only the person who is alleged to have pulled the trigger is culpable. He might be culpable for the killing, but the act of being, I'm sure they were accessories, because people are saying 3-4 persons. The wife will tell you how many people went in there, and they're all, I suspect that if a proper investigation is done, you're going to find all those persons culpable somewhere or the other. So there's a need, and that's why people are worried, because people feel that with this rush, a thorough and proper investigation will not be done.
Oh, and people have every reason to believe that, based on past experiences and so forth. Going back in 2000 and 2002, April, the shooting to death by members of the Black Clothes Police of Shaka Blair and scores of other persons. Mr. Slow, I guess the question here is, well, not really a question, as we prepare to close now. I suspect that your colleague, the acting commissioner, the one who sits there performing the duties of commissioner of police, may be watching this program. He seems not to be in control of the Guyana police force at all. He seemed to be at sea. I don't know. What message do you have for him right now as we close off this program?
Well, there are many reports. I think there's no secret. There are many reports the officers have been saying. It's have been carried in some cases in the media, that when the commissioner gives certain instructions, those things are overturned by the political directorate. There are many cases over the past year. So the commissioner, or the person who's carrying out the function, Mr. Appy, finds himself in a very unfortunate and delicate situation. He has to stand up and make sure that the correct things are done. You know, many times, even in my time, politicians might want to say, well, tell you to do things. You have to let them know that, sorry, it cannot be done, or it cannot be done in the manner that they want it to be done. And that is what you have to do, whatever the consequences. As I've said to many people, you don't have to be disrespectful. You don't have to be disrespectful. Very respectfully, let them know what the situation is, what the law is, and no, you cannot do it, or you cannot do it that manner. You cannot. For example, and that is the problem. It was allowed initially. They sat back, Mr. Appy sat back and allowed these things to happen. He gave instructions, or in one case, it was well publicized where Ikin promoted people illegally. And when the commissioner rescinded the promotion, the understanding is that the Home Affairs Minister intervened and said, well, no, the promotion must go through. So you're undermining the commissioner. You're undermining the commissioner. You had the incident again with the Police Association. Commissioner instructed that the election should be held at a particular time. Brutus and others held the meeting before the morning, elected their people. When the other meeting was held the afternoon, the one that was directed by the commissioner, then the commissioner wrote to say that, look, he understands that 2 meetings were held, and he's declaring both meetings null and void, and directed that the new elections, where I'm saying elections, and directed that new elections should be held. And then overnight, it was changed, and the first meeting is now recognized. So all of these things suggest a weakness on the part of my friend. I'm still have Nigel as a friend, my friend Nigel, and heavy interference from the political directorate, and conniving and undercutting by the people immediately. Those people that were referred to as being dangerously ambitious. And it is clear, any rank, many things, when you see things happen, you know. If Oppie says that he did not know that the SWAT team went to the executive course, I believe him. I believe that he did not know. You might want to say, well, then he doesn't have control of the organization that he's heading. But I think that's the nature of the thing. But someone would have. Because remember, the officers in charge of the SWAT team would not wake up and decide that he go into a executive course. The commander in the executive course, I am sure, knows the protocol. And even if she feels that there's a situation that the SWAT should get involved in, she does not have the authority. She can't call the SWAT commander and say, send a team. She has to go through some channel, some protocol. So people are involved in sending the team there, and everybody will now duck and try to hide, which is, again, that is so dishonest and so unprofessional. When you make decisions in senior positions and they turn out to be wrong, you must be strong enough to stand up and say, yes, I made the decision because of so. And you justify it based on the circumstances of that time, because when you are in senior law enforcement positions in particular, you're faced with some dynamic situations where things change all the time. And a decision that is made now can prove 5 minutes after to be, you feel it is correct now, 5 minutes after, given the dynamic nature of the situation, it might turn out to be the wrong decision. But you make decisions based on information at hand. So people, it's a real sad situation. And I will say, you asked me to, I will say to Mr. Happy Nigel, it's time that you clamp down on certain things to show that you have command of the police force. I don't think it is too late. As again, you don't have to be disrespectful to anyone, but people have to know you have command of the force. The law protects you. You can't have people outside of the force determine who is to be transferred here and who is to be transferred there. No, cannot. You should not. Cannot happen. Cannot. As I said, I understand initially. You might have been a little timid, and you would have carried out those instructions, illegal though they are, but it's over a year. It's over a year, and you need to ensure, you have to now look at your legacy to make sure that things are done in a manner that the law prescribes for them to be done.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Paul Slow. Appreciate it. We will invite you back here very soon. People enjoyed every bit of your time here. Continue to be safe in this horrible pandemic situation, you and your family, your loved ones, and everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Paul Slow, for your time.
Thank you, Mark. And you and viewers and listeners, please continue to be safe. As they say, the virus is real. And please do everything that is necessary to protect yourself and to stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Paul Slow. Have a great weekend, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Mr. Paul Slow there, he said that you don't have to take illegal instructions from those political bosses or whoever they are. You don't have to. Paul Slow has a history of that. He never took instructions, not even from Jack Dale, not even from Irfan Ali, not even from the late Ronald Gadraj and others. He never did. Kudos to you, Mr. Paul Slow. The others should grow some huge testicles. They should do that and refuse those illegal instructions. They should not allow the police force to be contaminated by questionable individuals, or to be run by individuals with nefarious actions or intentions. Some of them are drug lords, some of them are fuel smugglers, some of them are gold smugglers, and all these things feel that they can flex their muscles and control the police force. Some of them showing off their weapons and sophisticated weapons and all these different things. Dark days have returned to Guyana. Very, very dark days have returned to Guyana. We continue to pray for the family members of this young man, Orrin Boston, who was murdered by members of the SWAT team, a so-called SWAT team that was sent there specifically to kill him, because that is exactly what they did. The young constable who they want to put the blame on should not be the only one that is responsible for the murder of Orrin Boston. We're hearing the name of the young constable, Gordon. Oops, I give you guys a hint. Gordon, that's the name we're hearing. We're hearing that the young constable knows Mr. Orrin Boston very well. We're hearing that the young constable has connections with folks, questionable characters outside of the police force. All these allegations we're hearing, mind you, allegations. They're allegations. I just thought I'd throw those allegations out there because it is what it is. But Mr. Paul Stowe is correct. Not only that young constable should be charged or should be investigated, every single one of those SWAT team members, and they have to say during the course of the investigations whether all of them are members of the Guyana Police Force. Again, I repeat, whether all of them are members of the Guyana Police Force. Have a great rest of the weekend. God bless you. Keep safe. Wear your mask. If you have to be vaccinated, go right ahead and be vaccinated. If you don't want to be vaccinated, still protect yourself. Wear your mask and whatever else. Shame on the installed regime. Shame on them. Early next week, Irfan Ali is going to be in New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly. I'm told that he wants to meet with so many people. He wants to meet with people. But I'll be watching who are the ones from Brooklyn that will be meeting with Irfan Ali. I'll be watching. Things are rough in the country. People are being killed. People are being persecuted. Economic genocide. Use a term coined by my friend Lincoln Lewis. I've got to go. The operator Lemon is signaling me that time is up. Thanks to all our guests, Honorable MPs, Ganesh Mahipal and Sherwin Holder. Thank you so much to Dr. Richard Van Westjars as well, who put that big smile on his face when he heard that Congress for the PNCR will be held by the end of 2021. The race is going to heat up. The race is going to heat up. Who will we support? I don't know. I don't have a horse in the race as yet. That's just my take. No horse in the race as yet. God bless you all. Mwah. I love you.
It's hard to be at peace with the ones who are so discard. It's hard. Them have a knife in your back and them smile it so broad. Help me to deal with the ones them who say them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. I never want to take your glory, Lord. Send your angels to encamp around about me and stand guard. To envy is so easy and to love it is so hard. Let me work for your glory and not for the award. Don't make me ever get caught up in the scream and the applause. And go talk about the blessing and not talk about the Lord. All these things are vanity. I need your reward. Let me be real. Don't put on no facade. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them give me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Sticks and stones can break my bones and words can harm me. They can harm me. When the evil come against me, you'll protect me. You'll protect me. Father, I need the strength of your son, cause you know my work is not done. Lord, I need that endurance just to finish this race that I run. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. And help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd is shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. You tell me to stand firm, cause every little plan you have a confirm. I know them evil plan turn. In a darkness, me a the lantern. So help me to deal with the ones that who said them love me when them really don't. Jesus, help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love